Hello and welcome to your test review video. For this test, and this is the last hands-on test you'll be taking this year, you will need your camera with a charged battery. We will provide you with a copy of the test. This test is designed to see if you've been paying attention and if you can actually use your camera and if you can take macro shots. The test is broken into two parts. There's a bright light part and a low light part. We're going to start with the bright light part, and I'm going to go through this one step at a time. So, step one is, or task one is, manually set the focus point to the center and set the focus of your camera to manual. Okay, on most Canons and many Nikons, there's a switch on the side of your lens that says AF or MF or auto and manual or A and M. Okay, auto or A is autofocus, manual focus is MF. Okay, now, to set your autofocus points, you will need to, on a Canon, push this thumb button right here. And when you do that, the back of the camera will light up and it will show you the autofocus points. And you can use your index finger to, and the little dial on your index finger, to move your autofocus points around. And I want you to set it to the center one. Now, for Nikon users, you have to go into your menu and you have to tell it to do a single point focus. That's located somewhere in your menu. Okay, you're going to have to research this on your own. You're going to have to go through and find where you set your autofocus mode, and then you'll get a little, here on your screen on the Nikon, you'll get a little graphic that shows you which autofocus point is being used, and you can use your thumb joystick or your controller on the back to move that around. Okay, now the Canons I think are a little bit easier for autofocus, and the question that you're going to ask yourself is, if I'm manually focusing the camera, why do I need to pick the autofocus point? Well, first of all, I want you to know how to pick an autofocus point on your camera. Second of all, when you're manually focusing, when you get the portion of the image in focus that's on top of that point that you selected, that point will flash and your camera will beep at you that is in perfect focus. That's how you know you're really in focus. So my manual focus ring on this lens is right here. Some of them are out here on the front. It just depends on the lens. Okay, so that's how you do step number one. Step number two is set your camera's ISO to its lowest setting. Okay, or 100. So in Canon world, I have a button for ISO, and I can then flip my little finger dial around until I get to the lowest setting, which is on this camera, in the mode that it's in is 200. So 100 or its lowest setting. So I'm in ISO 200. In Nikon world, you have to go into the menu and you have to go to ISO and you have to pick the lowest ISO from there. Okay, so once we've got the ISO set to 100, we're going to put our camera in manual mode, the mode dial at the top, so I'm in manual mode. I'm going to then set my aperture to between f8 and f10, so we're closing that aperture down. So I'm at f9, which is perfect. So you can be f8, f9, f10. Okay? Task 4 is to set the white balance to an appropriate setting. I'm going to tell you that this light up here that I'm pointing to right now, I'm going to tell you this is the sun. So I would hit my white balance button, it's WB, and then I would use my thumb dial here or your arrows to flip it over to daylight. Get to flip it over to daylight. So you've got the right white balance and you've got the right aperture setting, you've got the right ISO setting. We have one more setting we're going to look at, and that is the picture mode. Okay, on most of your modern cameras, you have something called picture mode. Okay, and the picture mode on a Canon has 6 little rectangles that are like arranged in a circle, and they look like they're tilted back in perspective. And if I push that, it takes me straight to the picture mode. In Nikon, this is in your menus. It is in the same place where you would set your camera to black and white if you wanted to shoot in black and white. Normally we don't shoot in black and white. You guys have learned how to convert in Photoshop from color to black and white, and you know that you have a lot more options and you have a lot more control over your image when you're converting it in Photoshop than if you're letting the camera do it for you. But in the same place where you would find the black and white setting, in my case it's monochrome, okay, you will find things like faithful, neutral, landscape, portrait, and standard. Okay? Portrait, if you're in portrait mode, as soon as you take the picture, when the camera processes that picture, it kind of warms it up a little bit. It gets a little more warm glow over it, and it softens it just a little bit to hide minor facial blemishes. That's what the portrait mode does. The landscape mode, the camera will boost the blues and greens up. Okay, it'll take those blues and greens and it will raise the saturation of those colors. Okay, so I'm in landscape mode now, so I'm ready to shoot. So, number 6, using manual mode and the light meter, remember your light meter, set the shutter speed to the correct exposure, and we're going to take a well-lit macro shot. Okay, now I'm not going to put on a macro tube or anything, I just want you to get as close in as your camera will let you under the bright lights. Okay, now having said that, we've set our aperture, so that's not going to change. We've set our ISO, so that's not going to change. So we only have one thing left that we can adjust the exposure with, and that's the shutter speed. So you have to remember to look at your light meter in your camera and get it right in the middle using just the shutter speed. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, and I'm manually focusing. Don't forget to manually focus. I will be checking that these are nice and sharp. So let's get it nice and focused. There we go. Okay, and my center of autofocus point is lighting up. Okay, and I'm at f9 and I have a shutter speed of a 1/15 of a second. Okay, so I'll zoom in a little bit. There we go. There we go. And I'll go ahead and fire off a picture. Okay, and there it is. I have the picture. You'll show it to the teacher, and I'll mark whether you did it or not. Okay, it needs to be in focus, and it needs to be well exposed. Okay, then when we're done with that, I'm going to turn the lights down. So I'm going to say the sun just went behind a cloud. It's now very cloudy out. First of all, move your autofocus point to one of the side points. So in Canon world, you push the autofocus selection button, you use your index finger to move it over to one of the side points. I just did that. Okay, you'll see it happen on the back of your screen or through your viewfinder. Okay, open your aperture to its maximum setting, its widest open setting. So that's going to be, on this particular lens, is going to be, I'm going to open it to f3.5. So there is f3.5. That's its widest open setting. Okay, manually turn on your flash. I just want to see if you can manually turn on your flash here. There's usually around your flash somewhere, there's a little button with a little lightning bolt on it or above it, and that will cause your flash to pop up. Okay? Set the ISO to 400 and the white balance for shade. So I'm going to go ahead and click my ISO button, and I'm going to set my my ISO to 400. I'm going to click my WB button, and I'm going to switch my white balance over to shade. Okay? Frame a macro shot at your camera's minimum focusing distance using a rule of thirds. Manually focus the camera. So again, I'm going to get in as close as I can. I'm going to switch my focus point here real quick. I want to go over to the left side. So there we go. So I'm going to zoom in there as tight as I can on this. It's pretty tight. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and focus. There we go. And I'm getting my lights, or my focus points are lighting up. Remember, when you're macro shooting, moving the camera back and forth can also focus for you. So there we go. Got it. There it is. It's right on. So I fired that off. I have the shot. It's showing rule of thirds. It's focused. Its exposure is correct. And you're done with the test. I'm going to remind you that everything is 4 times. So this test is worth 400 points. This should be mostly review for you, except for the white balance and maybe the moving the autofocus point around. But you should do fine with this. Okay? Let's have a strong end of the year.